My kitchen has two entry points. One that leads to the dining room, which leads to the living room and the front door. The other leads to my hallway, where to the left is a closet in the dining room. To the right is the bedrooms, bathroom, washroom, and another closet. My daughter, 6 at the time, my nieces, 4 and 3, were chasing each other as I was making dinner and talking to my wife and cousin. Then, my niece, the youngest one, stopped dead in the kitchen and stared into the hallway and started crying. Not like, oh, they left me out of the game crying. More like, what the hell is going on, wailing. She isn't looking at anyone in the kitchen, but staring straight ahead and walking forward. Like, you can see she doesn't want to go where she's going, but it's like she can't stop moving her legs. I look at her and try to get her attention. Her mother is calling her back toward the dining room, yet she ignored us and kept on slowly marching towards the hall. I was like a foot away from the entryway to the hall and stood in front of her. I tried to stop her, but she kept walking and crying, all the while looking up at the ceiling. So I just said fuck it. I grabbed her and carried her into the living room and held her. As soon as I picked her up, she snapped out of it. She looked at me and realized where she was, but she was still crying. I asked her what happened, what she saw, or what she had heard. My daughter, who was still running around the house during the commotion, said, "Oh, she probably just saw the Spider-Man." I asked her to repeat herself. "Who is the Spider-Man?" "I don't know, Daddy. It's like a spider with a people face, not a bug face. He lives in the hallway, and if he jumps on your head, he can tell you what to do when you can't fight him." This was about 2 years ago, and while we may have had some strange things happen since then, nothing was as terrifying as my daughter telling me with full confidence that there was a malevolent entity in our home, and she had been seeing it for years. So, my husband is a major skeptic, and that's why I was shocked at what he told me he saw last night. Or, actually, very early this morning, between the hours of 3 and 5 a.m. I kept trying to get him to admit he was joking, but he was dead serious and assured me that he definitely saw something he couldn't explain. He said he woke up and couldn't go back to sleep, so he went downstairs. This isn't unusual for him. He often wakes up super early and doesn't go back to sleep. We live in a row of townhouses. Our downstairs is at a second floor level, with our living room, dining room, and kitchen area, and a sliding glass door that opens up to a small enclosed deck and overlooks a strip of wooded area that makes up our backyard. He was sitting in a recliner that is positioned directly across the room from the doors, with nothing but the TV on, to his right, in the corner next to the glass doors. He could see the outside clearly enough. After about a half an hour or 45 minutes of watching TV, some movement outside caught his eye. He said he turned to look and plainly saw a woman floating several feet away from the deck, just hovering in his line of sight, right over our backyard, maybe 8 to 10 meters from where he sat. He says she didn't seem to notice him. She slowly floated across our backyard toward the right until she disappeared from his view. He didn't get up to see where she went. He just sat there and tried to process it. Since we live in a row of townhouses and the area is pretty well lit, I'm wondering how many backyards she traversed and if anyone else saw her. Unfortunately, it would be super weird to bring this up with any of our neighbors. We've only lived here for a few months and don't know anyone well enough to ask them about something so bizarre. I asked him for as many details as I could when he told me about it this morning. He felt he could rule out sleep paralysis or any sleep-related hallucinations, as he had been wide awake for some time. No drugs or alcohol involved either. As for the floating lady, she was not close enough and it was too dark for him to see any details, but she appeared to be a humanoid female figure with long white or light colored hair and a slim build. Her clothing appeared to be light, wispy material, possibly a gown, but again, the darkness and distance didn't allow him to see many details. She didn't glow or emit any light, and looked to be completely solid. So, basically, my husband saw what appeared to be an otherwise normal-looking human woman, besides the obvious floating, flying thing. My husband says he's been lost in thought and walking around in a stupor today, because he absolutely doesn't believe in paranormal stuff, but he can't explain what he saw. This happened in the spring of 2007. My then boyfriend and I were on our way from New York down to Miami to go to a music festival. We were driving south on the highway along the east coast of Central Florida when we pulled into a rest area so that he could catch a nap. He had been driving all day when he decided that he desperately needed a short rest before getting back behind the wheel. We had very recently bought the van, and he did not think I could handle maneuvering it, so he was doing all the driving. I later proved him wrong. He parked and jumped in the back of the van and laid down on the futon mattress we had laid there. He told me to leave him alone, and he proceeded to pass out from exhaustion. I was pretty freaked out because the rest area building was unmanned, locked up, and dark inside. The restrooms were closed. The small rest area building was surrounded by dark woods. There were about 4 other cars in the small parking lot, but no sign of any drivers. So I imagine they were having an emergency laydown as well. Normally, I would never have set a foot outside the van alone in such a scenario. My instincts told me not to get out of the van, but I had taken some Midol for some menstrual cramps, and they had given me brutal nausea. I really needed some pretzels. I mustered up all of my courage and opened the passenger side door and squeezed through the space between our vehicle and the vehicle that was parked directly next to it. As soon as I had a clear line of sight to the front of the rest stop building, I saw the thing. I saw it clearly. Straight ahead, I saw the brightly lit front of the rest stop. To the left of the doors was it. I was flooded with what I consider a telepathic message from the being. I cannot be seen. I cannot be seen. I must travel by night and exist in darkness. I cannot be seen. I cannot be seen. I cannot be seen. And I felt an enormous wave of compassion for the being, rather than fear, which may seem a more logical reaction to someone hearing this story. For some reason, my brain only categorized it as one thing initially, an outsider worthy of compassion and tolerance. Its skin was pure chalk white, not the skin tone white, the color white. Its eyes were several times larger than ours. It had 2 little air holes for a nose and a very thin mouth. Its frame was completely concealed by its enormous, long, black hooded robe. It looked as though it were quite gaunt underneath, pretty frail looking. It was sitting on its bottom, knees bent, back against the brick front of the rest area. It was sitting with its back very straight, tall and erect. It seemed in awe of me, or maybe in awe that I was actually approaching it. It looked vaguely like a human, very vaguely. Its face was snake-like. Its eyes were right on me. I threw a little everyday smile in its direction, and then I did something strange. I continued to walk toward the rest area, even after I saw it. I walked toward the rest area building, closer to it. I walked forward about 20 feet from the rear of the van to the rest area steps, up the 20 or so steps, and to the right, where the vending machine was located. And my thoughts at this point were very bizarre in retrospect. I felt bad for the thing. I didn't want it to feel different. I know that sounds hilariously quaint if we are indeed talking about an interdimensional being, but I didn't want to run back into the van because I didn't want to hurt its feelings. I didn't want to make it feel like a freak. It had already told me that it could not be seen due to the way people would react, so I wanted it to know that I didn't judge it for the way it looked, and that I was willing to come to terms with its horrific appearance in order to extend some humanity to it. So, it was with that very bizarrely strong conviction to stay righteous and humane to it that I walked toward the vending machine. I actually got the pretzels. I'm telling you, my stomach was churning. I used the vending machine with my back to it. Snyder's in hand, I swiveled around to look at it again before descending back down the stairs. It was at that moment that pure terror rippled through me. I was closer to it now, approximately 15 feet away, and I could see now that there was definitely no way that it was human. It was staring right at me like a wide-eyed insect. It was still in exactly the same position, except for that it had turned its head to look at me better as my position changed. It looked like an alien. It looked like a demon. It was not human. Its huge, one-dimensional eyes. Were they totally black? I'm not sure, but I know that it did not have white in its eyes. They were almond-shaped, like the classic alien eye that we all know. It was then that I realized it was extremely fucking tall. Unthinkably tall. Although I was standing and it was sitting, its head still stood taller than mine. Its huge eyes were fixed on me totally, with fascination, alarm, and with the most intense focus, just like the way my cat looks at something right before she pounces on it. When I had made the decision to climb the stairs toward it and to not retreat to the van, I felt that it was sitting on top of something, and that's why its head was raised up so high. Now, from this closer perspective, I could see that it was not sitting on anything but its own butt. If I had realized that it was this fucking tall at the start, I very well may have not gone up the stairs. So, after the ripple of terror went through me, I responded by smiling the way you smile at a stranger when your eyes catch on the bus. I shouted a casual, thin, "Hey, how you doing?" smile. Why and how I acted as if things were totally fucking normal, I cannot explain. I've never acted so cool in my life. There is a Seinfeld episode where Elaine says that one of the reasons that she's a decent person is because when I see freaks in the street, I never stare at them, and yet I'm careful not to look away because I want to make the freaks feel comfortable. So that's actually what was going through my head, believe it or not. If I were to guess what the thing was doing when I encountered it, judging by its body language, I would say that it was somewhat displaced and resting. But I have no clue. Maybe it was in the middle of something far more sinister. It didn't look like a mutant or an experiment. It looked ancient, timeless, placeless, graceful, and horrible. It was also firmly in this dimension when I saw it. It was not a hazy vision in the slightest. The lighting was not dim. The extremely bright lights that illuminated the front of the rest area building revealed every contour of this entity. If only I had been closer, I could have provided much more detail about its facial features. As I was walking back to the van, I quickly strategized about how to make sure that my fear did not paralyze me and prohibit me from getting safely inside the car. I decided not to look back or even around me as I turned the key, because if I saw that it had moved or I saw it coming toward me, I would have been too terrified to manage with the car keys. I got in the van. I locked the door. I screamed that we needed to leave immediately. And we did. As we drove away, about 90 seconds after it was last in my sight, I looked out the window and saw it was gone. There was nothing where it had been, just brick wall and concrete floor. In 2001, my youngest son was hit by a car. He was only 4 years old. It was very bad. He stopped breathing. His heart stopped, and he was revived 3 times. The neurologist told my wife and I that the injuries were severe, and most likely he would not survive the night. We were devastated. He was in a coma naturally, and also they added meds to make sure he stayed that way, to keep his brain pressure down. He survived the night. About a week later, he woke up. After they took out the breathing tube, he could talk. He kept asking where Veronica was. I asked the nurses if one of them or one of their coworkers was named Veronica. They said no one worked there with that name. I asked him what she looked like. He said she was an old woman who talked funny. I asked him if she was dressed like the nurses, and he replied, no, she always wore the same clothes, a blue dress with yellow flowers. I asked what she said to him. He told me she would come stand by his bed, hold his hand, and tell him she loved him and everything would be okay. A few hours later, my in-laws showed up. I told my father-in-law about what my son was saying. He turned white. He said he knew who it was. His mother's name was Veronica. She was from Slovakia and had a heavy accent, and she was buried in a blue dress with yellow flowers. Our son is named Joseph Michael. We found out, after he was born, from my father-in-law's older sister, that they had an older brother named Joseph Michael, who died in Slovakia at around 4 years old. My father-in-law was the only one born in the US. If I would have not experienced it, I wouldn't believe it. But my son's great-grandmother reached out from beyond the grave to comfort her son's namesake. I also believe she helped to make sure that we would not relive the tragedy she went through. Pure love is the most powerful force in the universe. It can break time and space boundaries. Oh, by the way, Joseph is doing fine. He has issues from the brain injury, but he is an intelligent 21-year-old now.